Tasha had always loved the ocean. Growing up in a small coastal town, she spent most of her summer days by the water. While her friends were content to hang out at the beach or take walks, Tasha loved to swim. She would dive into the cool water, feeling the waves crash against her body as she swam further and further out into the deep blue. But on one particular afternoon, everything changed. It was a sunny day, and the beach was crowded with people. Families were gathered under umbrellas, kids were building sandcastles, and the sound of laughter filled the air. Tasha, as usual, was swimming alone, enjoying the calmness of the water. She was about 50 yards from the shore, doing her usual laps when something caught her attention. At first, it seemed like a person was just bobbing in the water, but something about the way they moved made her pause. She looked again, squinting into the bright sunlight. It was a man, thrashing around in the waves, struggling to stay above the surface. Panic rushed through Tasha's body. The man was in trouble. She could see that he was stuck in a rip current, a dangerous pull in the water that would drag him further away from the shore if he didn't get help. Tasha didn't hesitate. She dove under the water and swam toward him with everything she had. Her heart raced in her chest, not from fear, but from the urgency of the situation. She reached him just in time, her arms wrapping around his waist as she kicked hard to move them both toward the shore. The man, barely able to speak, was gasping for breath and clinging to her, but he was too weak to do anything on his own. Tasha didn't stop, pushing through the waves and using all her strength to keep them both afloat. The journey back to the shore felt like an eternity. Every time she thought they were getting closer, the waves would push them back, but Tasha kept going, determination fueling every stroke. The man was heavy, and her arms ached, but she didn't stop. She knew if she did, they could both be pulled under. Finally, after what felt like forever, Tasha's feet hit the sandy bottom of the shore. She pulled the man onto the beach with every ounce of energy she had left. As they lay there, the sound of the waves seemed far away, and the world slowed down. The man was gasping for air, and Tasha, too, was exhausted but relieved. "Thank you," the man said, his voice hoarse. He looked up at her with wide eyes, clearly shaken from the ordeal. "You saved my life." Tasha was out of breath but smiled, brushing her wet hair from her face. She hadn't expected anything. She was just glad she could help. "You're welcome," Tasha replied simply, her voice calm despite the adrenaline that was still rushing through her. She didn't need recognition for what she had done. For Tasha, it was just another day of doing what felt right. The man, still catching his breath, looked at her with something more than just gratitude in his eyes. He seemed taken aback, almost in awe. "I don't know how to thank you enough," he said, his voice shaking with emotion. Tasha simply shrugged, brushing sand off her hands as she stood up. She was about to turn and walk away, but the man reached out and grabbed her arm. "Wait," he said, still holding her gaze. "My name is Michael Harrison. I'm the CEO of a tech company. I can't just walk away from this without offering you something in return." Tasha looked at him with wide eyes, surprised by his words. But before she could respond, Michael continued, "I don't know what I can offer you, but please, let me show my gratitude." Tasha stood there, a bit stunned by the man's offer. She didn't know how to react. After all, she had just done what anyone would have done in that situation, helping someone in need. Saving lives wasn't something she had ever thought of as a big deal. She was just a regular girl from a small town who'd grown up by the sea, and she knew how dangerous the water could be. But the man, Michael Harrison, seemed insistent. He was sitting up now, his breathing slowing down as he began to recover from the shock of almost drowning. He looked at her with wide, grateful eyes, his face still pale from the scare. Tasha wasn't sure what to make of the situation. She wasn't the type to expect something in return for helping someone. In fact, she'd never even thought about being rewarded for doing the right thing. Helping others was just a part of who she was. But Michael wasn't backing down. He kept looking at her, almost as if he was expecting her to accept whatever offer he was about to make. Tasha couldn't help but notice the sincerity in his gaze. She'd met a lot of people in her life, but this man, this stranger, seemed different. He wasn't just grateful, he seemed to feel deeply that he owed her something. Tasha hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to respond. She opened her mouth to speak, but then closed it again. She didn't want to seem rude, but she also didn't want to accept anything from someone she'd just met. Still, Michael was looking at her expectantly, so she finally spoke. "I didn't do it for any reward," she said, her voice soft but firm. "I just saw someone in need, and I helped." She gave him a small smile, trying to downplay the situation, but Michael wasn't satisfied with her answer. "No," he said, shaking his head. "You don't understand. What you did, it's something I can't just ignore. I want to make sure you know how much I appreciate it. I've been in dangerous situations before, but I've never been saved like this." He paused, glancing out at the ocean, his eyes distant for a moment before he looked back at her. "I don't want to just walk away from this without giving you something. A way to show my gratitude." Tasha felt a little overwhelmed. This was so far outside of her normal life. She had never dealt with anyone like Michael Harrison, but she didn't want to be rude either. "I really don't need anything," she said, shaking her head gently. "You're safe now, and that's enough for me." But Michael wasn't giving up. He looked at her intently. "Please, let me at least help you in some way. You saved my life. Let me return the favor. It's the least I can do." Tasha still wasn't sure how she felt about accepting anything from him. She wasn't used to asking for help, and it felt strange to even consider it. But the sincerity in Michael's eyes made her pause. He was determined, and for some reason, she found herself starting to believe he genuinely wanted to help her. "I don't know what to say," she admitted. "I've never been in a situation like this before." Michael smiled gently, understanding her hesitation. "You don't have to say anything now, but I'd like to meet with you sometime, just to talk more about how I can help. It doesn't have to be anything huge, just a small way to show my appreciation. Would you be willing to think about it?" Tasha didn't know what to say. She wasn't sure if she should accept or walk away. But something about Michael's offer felt genuine, and a part of her realized that maybe, just maybe, it was okay to accept help when it was offered with such kindness. "Okay," she said after a long pause. "I'll think about it." Michael's face lit up with relief. "Thank you. I promise you won't regret it." A few days had passed since Tasha had saved Michael Harrison from drowning. The encounter had left her feeling uneasy, as if something had changed, but she couldn't quite put her finger on it. She had reluctantly agreed to meet with him again, unsure of what would come of it. Her family had always taught her to be kind and helpful, but they also warned her not to trust too easily. Tasha wasn't sure if she should accept Michael's offer to help them. She wasn't someone who needed charity, and the idea of receiving something for just doing the right thing felt strange. But there was something about his persistence that made her think he genuinely wanted to give back. As Tasha walked home from her part-time job that evening, her phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. She opened it, and her heart skipped a beat when she saw it was from Michael. "I hope you're doing well. I'd love to meet again and talk about how I can help. Let me know when you're free." Tasha paused, standing in the middle of the sidewalk, looking at the screen. She didn't know what to feel. On one hand, it was a generous offer, and on the other, she couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't the kind of person who accepted help from others, especially strangers. Still, Michael had saved her from feeling guilty after the rescue. He was so determined, so sure that he could make a difference in her life, and part of her was curious to know more. She went home that evening, trying to shake off the overwhelming feeling of uncertainty. Her parents were sitting at the dinner table, talking about the day's events. Her mom, a teacher, was telling her father about the progress of her students, and her dad, a mechanic, was talking about a new project at work. When Tasha entered, her mom looked up and smiled. "Hey, sweetie, how was work today?" Busy, Tasha replied with a small smile, sitting down at the table. She wasn't sure how to bring up what had happened at the beach, so she kept it to herself. But her parents knew something was different. Tasha wasn't usually so quiet. "Everything okay?" her dad asked, noticing the thoughtful expression on her face. Tasha hesitated, then took a deep breath. "I met someone," she began, then paused. Her parents exchanged a curious glance. "His name is Michael Harrison. He's the CEO of a tech company. He was the one I saved from drowning the other day." Her mom's eyes widened. "The CEO?" Tasha nodded, feeling a little awkward. "Yeah, he's been messaging me, wanting to meet again. He wants to help me and our family." "Help?" Her father leaned forward, clearly interested. "What do you mean by help?" "I'm not sure yet," Tasha said, looking down at her hands. "He said he wants to show his appreciation for saving him. He wants to help with my education, maybe even more." She shrugged, still unsure of what exactly Michael had in mind. Her parents exchanged another look. Her mom was the first to speak. "It's an incredible offer, Tasha. You know, we've always been proud of how you help others, but we've never been in a position where someone wanted to help us in return." Tasha bit her lip, conflicted. "I don't know if I can accept something like that. It feels wrong somehow. I didn't do it for any reward. I just wanted to help him." Her dad reached out and placed a hand on hers. "Sometimes, people want to help because they genuinely care. If he wants to help, maybe you should think about it. It might not just be about us. Maybe he sees something in you." Tasha thought about her father's words as she sat there, lost in thought. Was it really okay to accept help when it was offered with such kindness? Her parents' support was everything to her, and they had always worked so hard to provide for the family. She didn't want to burden them further. "I'll think about it," Tasha said softly, still unsure of what to do. That night, she lay awake in bed, thinking about Michael's offer and the possibilities it could bring. Would she really be able to accept such a grand gesture? Could she let someone into her life this way? She wasn't sure, but one thing was clear. She had a decision to make, and it was one that would change her life forever. The next day, Tasha couldn't stop thinking about the conversation she had with her parents. She hadn't expected such a big decision to be on her shoulders. The more she thought about it, the more she realized how different her life could be if she accepted Michael's offer. Could she really take help from a stranger like that? It felt so surreal. But she had to admit, the idea of a future where her family didn't have to struggle was tempting. After another day of work, Tasha received a message from Michael asking if she could meet him. He was still eager to discuss how he could help, and he suggested they meet at a local cafe. Tasha hesitated for a while, but finally decided it might be a good opportunity to get more details. If nothing else, she could at least listen to what he had to say. When she arrived at the cafe the next afternoon, Michael was already seated at a table by the window. He waved as she walked in, and she walked over to join him. He greeted her with a warm smile, and she couldn't help but notice how different he looked now that he was out of the water and in a suit. He was still the same man who had almost drowned, but he seemed so much more composed now. "Thank you for meeting me," Michael said, motioning to the seat across from him. "I really appreciate it." Tasha nodded, sitting down. She still didn't know how to start the conversation, but Michael did it for her. "I've been thinking about what you did for me," he began. "You didn't hesitate to jump in and save me. That kind of bravery, that kind of heart, is something I don't come across every day. I want to help you, Tasha, and I want to help your family." Tasha listened intently, but her mind was racing. She had a million thoughts in her head. How could she accept such an offer? It felt overwhelming. She wasn't used to receiving things without earning them. It didn't feel right. But Michael continued speaking, his words making her pause. "I know it might seem strange," he said, noticing the hesitation on her face. "But I'm not just offering this because I feel obligated. I want to do it because I see potential in you. You're smart, and you're strong. And you deserve more than what life has given you so far. Tasha swallowed hard. His words felt genuine. It wasn't about charity. It was about believing in her, about seeing something in her that she hadn't even seen in herself yet. She had always been so focused on getting by, on working hard to help her family, that she hadn't thought much about her own future beyond that. "What are you offering exactly?" she asked quietly, still trying to process everything. "I want to help you with your education," Michael said without hesitation. "I'll cover your tuition for college, and I'll make sure you have everything you need to succeed. And that's not all. I know your family has been struggling. If you accept, I'd like to help with that too. I want to make sure your family has a safe home and the opportunity to build a better life." Tasha's heart raced. It felt like everything she had worked for was suddenly within reach. But there was a part of her that still felt unsure. She had never relied on anyone like this before. She had always been independent, and this kind of help was so far beyond anything she had ever dreamed of. How could she accept it? Was it really okay? "I don't know what to say," Tasha whispered, looking down at the table. She could feel her hands trembling slightly. "This is just so much. I never expected anything like this." Michael leaned forward, his expression sincere. "I understand how this feels, but I want to help. I see something in you, Tasha. I see someone who has the power to do great things. You just need a little help to get there. Don't let pride stop you from accepting what's offered." Tasha sat back in her chair, her mind racing. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about her family's future too. Michael had given her a chance she couldn't ignore, even if it made her uncomfortable. After a long pause, she finally spoke. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll think about it, but I'm not sure how to accept such a big offer. I don't want to feel like I owe you everything." "You won't owe me anything," Michael reassured her with a smile. "This is about giving you the chance to be the best version of yourself. If you ever need anything, just know that I'm here to help. But it's all up to you." Tasha looked at him, feeling a mix of uncertainty and hope. She didn't know what her future would hold, but one thing was clear. This was the beginning of something new, something that could change everything. Tasha spent the next few days thinking deeply about Michael's offer. The more she thought about it, the more she realized how much it could change everything for her family. Her parents had always worked so hard to make ends meet, but they had never been able to give her the kind of opportunities that were now within reach. The thought of going to college, of studying something she was passionate about, felt like a dream. But accepting help from a stranger, no matter how kind or generous, still felt strange. At home, Tasha tried to keep her thoughts to herself, but it was impossible to ignore the way her parents were talking. They could sense that something was different, that Tasha was carrying a weight on her shoulders. It was her mother who first brought up the subject during dinner. "Tasha," her mom said, looking up from her plate, "you've been quiet lately. Is everything okay?" Tasha hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to even begin explaining. She had never been good at asking for help, and the idea of someone offering her so much made her feel uneasy. But her parents were kind and patient, and they could see that something was on her mind. "I've been thinking about something," Tasha began slowly, glancing at her mom, and then her dad. "You remember the man I helped at the beach, right? Michael Harrison." Her parents nodded, and her dad spoke up. "The CEO, right? You told us about him." Tasha nodded. "Well, he's been in touch with me. He wants to help me with my future. He's offering to pay for my college tuition and help our family get a new house." Her parents looked at each other in shock, not sure they had heard her correctly. "He wants to help us?" her dad asked, his voice low. "A CEO of a big company?" Tasha nodded again, her heart racing. "Yeah, and he says he believes in me. He wants me to have a chance at a better life, a chance that we've never had before." Her mom, always the more cautious one, paused before speaking. "Tasha, this is a big decision. You know we've never been the kind of family to accept help like this. It's generous of him, but I'm not sure if we should take it. It's hard to accept something like this without feeling like we owe him everything." Tasha understood her mom's concerns. It was hard to imagine accepting something so big, especially when they had always gotten by on their own. But she also knew how much her parents had sacrificed for her, how hard they worked to keep things afloat. This opportunity wasn't just for her. It could change everything for her whole family. "I don't know what to do," Tasha admitted, feeling the weight of the decision press down on her. "It's just so much. I don't want to take advantage of him, but at the same time, it could really help us." Her dad leaned forward, looking at her with understanding. "Tasha, you've worked so hard. You've always tried to make things better for us. If this man wants to help you, maybe it's time we let someone else take some of the load off. We've always been proud of you, and we've done our best. But if this is what will give you the future you deserve, I think we should consider it." Tasha felt a knot in her stomach. Her father's words made her feel both hopeful and uncertain. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about her whole family's future. This could be a turning point. But could she really accept this kind of help without feeling guilty? "I just don't want to feel like I'm taking something that isn't mine," Tasha said softly, her voice wavering slightly. "What if I don't deserve it?" Her mom reached out and placed a hand on hers. "Tasha, you've always deserved the best. You've worked so hard to help us, and now it's your turn to take something for yourself. If Michael wants to help, and he truly believes in you, then maybe it's time to accept that help. You're not taking anything you don't deserve. You're taking a chance at a better life." Tasha looked down at her hands, still unsure, but her parents' words seemed to lift a bit of the burden off her shoulders. She realized that it wasn't about feeling guilty for accepting help. It was about seeing this as an opportunity to create a better future for herself and for them. Michael's offer was more than just a chance at an education. It was a chance to change everything for them all. "I'll meet with him again," Tasha said quietly, finally feeling like she was ready to take the next step. I think I need to do this." Her parents smiled, both of them clearly proud of her. "We're with you, Tasha," her dad said. "Whatever you decide, we support you." And with that, Tasha knew that no matter what happened next, she wasn't alone in this. Her family had her back, and she was finally ready to accept the help that had come her way. The days that followed were filled with a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation for Tasha. After her conversation with her parents, she felt a sense of relief. The weight of her decision had lifted, but the uncertainty still lingered. She had made up her mind to meet Michael again, but she wasn't entirely sure what the future would hold. What if she wasn't able to live up to the expectations? What if she couldn't make the most of this incredible opportunity? When the day of their meeting arrived, Tasha couldn't help but feel a bit anxious. She had spent the morning preparing herself, going over everything in her mind. She dressed simply but neatly, feeling both excited and nervous as she made her way to the cafe where she was supposed to meet Michael. The thought of sitting down with someone so successful, someone who had offered to help her so generously, still felt surreal. As she walked into the cafe, Michael was already there, sitting at a corner table, his laptop open in front of him. He looked up as soon as he saw her, and a warm smile spread across his face. There was something reassuring about the way he looked at her, as if he truly believed in her potential. Tasha felt a little more at ease when she saw his smile. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't as big a leap as she had made it out to be. "Hi, Tasha," Michael said as she approached the table. "I'm so glad you could make it." Tasha smiled nervously and took a seat across from him. She had so many questions, so many thoughts she needed to sort through. But Michael seemed to sense her unease right away. "I know this is a big step," he said, closing his laptop and focusing entirely on her. "But I want you to know that everything I've offered is completely up to you. There's no pressure, no strings attached. I believe in you, Tasha. That's why I want to help." Tasha took a deep breath. His words helped ease some of her worries. This wasn't about obligation. It was about opportunity. She could already sense that Michael wasn't the kind of person to make empty promises or offer help without meaning it. "I've thought about it a lot," Tasha said, her voice steady now. "And I think I'm ready to take this step." Michael nodded, clearly pleased. "I'm really glad to hear that. You've got so much potential, Tasha. I know that with the right support, you can do anything. College is just the beginning. There's so much more waiting for you." As they continued to talk, Michael explained in more detail what he had in mind. He didn't just want to help her with tuition. He wanted to ensure she had everything she needed to succeed. He spoke about mentorship, about offering guidance when she needed it, and about making sure that she had a support system in place, both personally and professionally. Tasha couldn't believe what she was hearing. This wasn't just about paying for school. It was about changing her entire future. Michael wasn't just offering money. He was offering a chance at a life she had only dreamed of. He believed in her, and that belief made all the difference. For the first time in a long while, Tasha allowed herself to imagine a future without the constant struggle that had defined her family's life. A future where she could pursue her passions, where she could study without worrying about how to pay for it all, where her family could have a better life too. As the conversation continued, Tasha began to feel a sense of excitement that she hadn't felt before. This wasn't just a handout. It was an investment in her future. And the more Michael spoke, the more she realized that she could make the most of this opportunity. Her dreams of going to college, of studying something meaningful, were now within reach. For the first time, she could picture herself not just surviving, but thriving. Before the meeting ended, Michael offered her the next steps: paperwork to complete, details about the scholarship, and plans to help her transition into the college life she had always wanted. He reassured her that, though the path would be challenging, he would be there to support her every step of the way. "I believe in you, Tasha," Michael said one last time as they stood up to leave. "This is your moment. Don't let anything hold you back." Tasha left the cafe with a heart full of hope. For the first time in years, she could see a way forward. There was a lot of hard work ahead, but with Michael's help and the support of her family, she knew she could do it. This was the beginning of a new chapter in her life, one where she would have the chance to create the future she had always dreamed of. In the weeks that followed her meeting with Michael, Tasha's life began to change in ways she hadn't imagined. The support Michael had promised wasn't just about financial help. It was about a real, tangible difference. He helped her with everything from securing her college place to providing resources she never thought she would have access to. It felt almost too good to be true, but every day, the reality of the opportunity she had been given sank in. Tasha was nervous at first, unsure of how to handle the new expectations that came with the scholarship and the mentoring Michael had offered. She had never been in a position where someone believed in her so much, and it was both exciting and overwhelming. But Michael was always just a phone call or message away, offering encouragement whenever she needed it. His advice wasn't just practical, it was thoughtful and personal, tailored to her needs. As she started preparing for college, she found herself surrounded by books, resources, and advice. It was like she had entered a world she had only dreamed of, one where she didn't have to struggle to get by. Tasha's parents were overjoyed to see the transformation in her. They had always worked hard, but they had never been able to give her the opportunities that Michael had opened up for her. Their pride in her success was clear, and Tasha's heart swelled every time they expressed how happy they were for her. But even with all the opportunities ahead of her, Tasha couldn't forget where she came from. Her upbringing had shaped her, and it was hard to let go of the habits she had formed out of necessity. At times, she felt guilty for accepting so much help. It felt like she was walking on a path that was suddenly much easier than the one she had known. She had always been independent, always relied on her own strength to get by. The idea of relying on someone else's generosity made her uncomfortable, but Michael continued to reassure her. "You've earned this," he told her during one of their many conversations. "You're not just receiving help, you're building the future you deserve. There's nothing wrong with taking that help when it's offered. You've done the hard work to get here." His words kept her going. Michael's belief in her gave her the confidence she had always lacked. Slowly, she began to relax into the idea of embracing all the help she had been offered. She started to see it not as something that made her weak, but as something that gave her the tools to succeed. As college approached, Tasha began to think more about her goals. She had always been passionate about technology and wanted to pursue a degree in computer science, but she had never thought it was possible before. Now, it seemed like an exciting challenge. With Michael's guidance, she was able to focus on what truly mattered to her, without worrying about how to pay for it, or whether she would even get the chance to study. The first day of college arrived, and Tasha was both excited and anxious. She walked onto campus with a mix of emotions swirling inside her. Everything seemed new and different. There were so many students, so many opportunities, and yet she couldn't shake the feeling of being out of place. But as soon as she sat down in her first lecture, she realized something important. This was where she belonged. This was the future she had worked for. And now, with Michael's help, it was within her reach. In the weeks that followed, Tasha threw herself into her studies. She felt more confident than ever before, driven by a sense of purpose that had been missing from her life. Her grades were better than they had ever been in high school, and she found herself enjoying the challenges that came with her coursework. For the first time, she didn't feel like she was just scraping by. She felt like she was truly learning, truly growing. Her family continued to support her every step of the way. Her mom and dad were proud, watching their daughter thrive in a way they hadn't thought possible. They saw the change in her, and it made them feel like they had done something right. Tasha knew there was still a long road ahead, but with Michael's help, her family's support, and her own determination, she felt ready for whatever came next. She had a future ahead of her, one where she could achieve everything she had ever dreamed of, and more. And for the first time in her life, she knew that anything was possible. As the years went by, Tasha's life began to transform in ways she had never imagined. College had opened doors to opportunities she'd once thought were beyond her reach. With Michael's continued support, she not only excelled in her studies, but also became deeply involved in projects and extracurricular activities related to her field of computer science. Her passion for technology grew stronger every day, and with every coding challenge she solved, she felt more and more confident in her abilities. Her parents, too, had seen a drastic change in their daughter. They had always been proud of her, but now they could see her becoming the person she had always dreamed of being, someone with a future full of promise. They supported her every step of the way, constantly reminding her that she had earned every bit of success that had come her way. And even though they had accepted Michael's help, they never stopped teaching her the values that had shaped her upbringing: hard work, perseverance, and the importance of humility. Tasha's relationship with Michael also evolved over the years. He wasn't just a benefactor. He had become a mentor and a close friend. His guidance helped her navigate the complexities of her academic and professional journey, and his belief in her never wavered. In the beginning, she had been uncertain about accepting help from someone she didn't know well. But as time passed, she realized that Michael's generosity wasn't just about financial assistance. It was about empowering her to succeed. She felt deeply grateful for everything he had done, but most of all, she appreciated how he had helped her see her own potential. One of the most significant moments came during her final year of college. Tasha had been working on a project that combined her love of technology with her desire to make a positive impact on the world. It was an ambitious project, one that required innovative solutions and a lot of dedication. The project was a partnership with a local nonprofit that aimed to provide access to technology for underprivileged communities. Tasha had always wanted to use her skills to give back, and this project was the perfect way to do that. Throughout the process, Michael offered his guidance and advice, but he also encouraged Tasha to take the lead. He trusted her judgment, and that trust pushed her to take risks and step outside her comfort zone. The project was a success, and the impact it had on the community was profound. Tasha was proud of what she had accomplished, but even more so, she was proud of how much she had grown. She had started out as a young girl from a small town, uncertain about her place in the world. But now, she was a confident, capable woman, ready to face the future with a clear sense of purpose. As graduation day approached, Tasha reflected on how far she had come. She thought back to the day she had saved Michael from drowning at the beach. That moment had seemed so simple at the time, but it had changed the course of her life forever. She had never expected anything in return, yet it had led to everything she had ever wanted. A chance at a better future, the opportunity to study what she loved, and the support of people who genuinely believed in her. When the day finally arrived, Tasha stood on stage, receiving her diploma, surrounded by her friends, family, and mentors. She felt a sense of accomplishment like no other, knowing that this was just the beginning of her journey. The future was wide open, filled with endless possibilities. She had worked hard to get here, and with the love and support of her family and Michael, she was ready to tackle whatever challenges lay ahead. After graduation, Tasha accepted a job offer from a leading tech company, where she would continue to work on projects that aligned with her values. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she was no longer afraid of hard work. With everything she had learned, and all the support she had received, Tasha was confident that she could achieve anything she set her mind to. As she looked back on her journey, Tasha realized that sometimes life took unexpected turns. But those turns, those moments of kindness and generosity, could lead to the most incredible transformations. She would never forget the day she saved Michael from drowning, and how that one act of kindness had opened doors she never thought possible. And most of all, she would always be grateful for the people who had helped her along the way. People who saw her potential, believed in her, and made her realize that the sky was the limit.